Okay, well, it's 11 o'clock, so let's get started here. Uh, we usually do not talk about products in spilling the beans. Spilling the beans, the reason we named it that is that we want to give you a water cooler, almost behind the scenes type of experience, the discussions that we're having within High Point, and just really give you an authentic experience that you may not get, as you watch other, YouTube videos and shorts and things of that nature. So that's the purpose of that. Number two is uh, we don't rehearse any of these. So it's very much live television, if you will. We have a few things that we want to hit on over the 45 minutes or so, but it's very much relaxed, conversational. For example, today we're not even really going to have a PowerPoint. I mean, we maybe have like two or three slides, and through those organic milestones, points that we want to hit through this presentation today, it may take a very organic path. So we never know how it's going to go. Um, thank goodness, usually pretty well. So kind of the product specific thing we're going to talk about today at High Point Networks. The kind of the formal name is Endpoint Zero Trust. It's offered as a service, so we call it Smart Endpoint Zero Trust. We often refer to that as ZTA. So if you hear that through the discussion today, that's what we're talking about. And Caleb and Josh, I'll just in a second here, I'll have each of you introduce yourself. But I'm Dean Sheely. I'm one of several security resources here at High Point Networks. We're literally blessed to have an array of people in different disciplines, whether it's, physical security, unified communications, storage, compute, networking, you name it. So we're really fortunate to have that. And I'm joined with a couple guys here that I really look up to, Caleb and Josh. And don't be afraid, guys, to flex a little bit and talk about your accolades and backgrounds and stuff like that. So, Caleb, if you'd start with introducing yourself, and then we'll go to you, Josh.
Yeah. I'm Caleb. I've been at High Point for about 5.5 years now. My career goes back to officially 2007, but I was playing and dabbling way before that. But I've kind of moved through the ranks, starting out as a a low-end help desk tech, moving all the way up. In the last 8 years, I've been leading teams. I lead our security and systems teams on the managed service side. So the smart services Dean was referring to earlier. I have a fairly substantial team of very, very talented people. Josh is one of them. I'm based out of our Billings, Montana office.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Josh, if you'd go and maybe talk about your CISSP and experiences and things like that. And Josh is a coder too, which is
Yes, he is.
really unusual. He's kind of like a unicorn, so we're very thankful for him. So yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so Josh Lytle. I've been working here for I guess it's a little over 2 years now, or just about on two. Yeah, a little over two
Yeah.
years. I'm a senior security engineer here, primarily working with SentinelOne and Mimecast, but I do kind of work with all of our security products. I got my CISP a little over a year ago. And yeah, my IT career, similar to Caleb's, has been kind of long. I've been working in IT for the last 10 years. Kind of got my start working for internet service providers, doing front level IT support, troubleshooting routers, stuff like that. But moved into managed services, worked with some large organizations, including local counties, police department. moved down into Montana to work for an MSP there. And yeah, I've been working in MSPs for the last almost 8 years, primarily with cybersecurity focus. But yeah, day to day, I've just been working on process automation for us internally. So working on improving our Sentinel-1 and Threat Locker offerings. Same with Mimecast. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Just really blessed to have both of these guys, and not only from a technology and leadership perspective, but they're also fantastic communicators and just some of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. So the audience here, if you'd ever like to reach out and speak with Caleb, Josh, or myself, we're always here for you. I'd like to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end of the presentation today. But you know, some people don't like to verbalize and stuff, which I completely appreciate. If you email your question to marketing@highpointnetworks.com, that'll get routed to the right person. And I promise you that we will not spam you as a result of routing your question through the marketing team. That's just not how our company rolls. So got the no spam guarantee there. Okay, so let's talk about EZT today, Endpoint Zero Trust. And I'm going to start with a little definition, Josh and Caleb. I'd like to get on the same page of what we think zero trust is. And I grabbed this off the internet. Cyber Zero Trust is a security approach that assumes that no user or device, here's a little secret, a device is actually considered a user too, that no device is inherently trustworthy, right? It requires continuous verification. That's really interesting. And maybe we'll get into that. Continuous verification of identity and permissions. So much of this is access control around the identity. For every access attempt, regardless of location of network. Okay, now I'll end here in like 20 seconds. The smart alecky answer that I give to this sometimes, okay, now listen very carefully. Zero trust in the network realm, ZTNA, is absolutely critical. And we have a lot of customers that are down the zero trust network path. And if you're doing that, continue to do it. It's absolutely critical. Okay. Now here's kind of the smart alecky answer that I sometimes give when people ask me what zero trust is. Okay. And kind of frame it like this. And this is a little bit of theatrics. This is a little bit of hyperbole, but put it in this frame. If you had to secure your environment without using literal network controls, the way that you would secure your environment, my belief is, lends itself well to zero trust. So it's really a mind shift from the last 20, 25 years that we've done so well at, and kind of now entering this new realm of continuous authentication, identity of the user, identity of the device, and continuous authentication. Whereas if you initially authenticate and then your behavior becomes wonky, you'll get kicked, and then you'll be asked to authenticate again, if you will. And then there's much more to it. But the reason that we're talking about a product today is because a lot of times when you hear about zero trust, it's more of a philosophy, it's more of a framework. But today we're going to talk about something that is real, tangible, and something that hits the ground. Okay. Caleb, do you have any just, short take on how you look at zero trust and what zero trust may be?
I think there's some I don't want to say misnomers. That's probably not quite fair, but there are a couple of approaches to zero trust. Often over the last quite a bit of time, I wouldn't put a number of years on it, but for the last quite a bit of time, we've talked about network zero trust and micro segmentation, isolating by services or by device type, etc. But I do believe that zero trust is significantly more than that. Dean, you alluded to, identity management, identity monitoring, identity verification, et cetera. And I think that's kind of, I don't know that we're going to get into identity necessarily too deeply today, but that is being able to monitor and control users and devices by identity is also a critical component to that. And I think that there's been such a focus on network zero trust, which, don't get me wrong, is completely relevant and completely important. But there's also other mechanisms that can also provide some level of zero trust.
Awesome, awesome. Caleb, do you want to take a short take on your opinion of what zero trust is? Or I'm sorry, Josh. I meant to direct that to Josh. I'm sorry. Josh, do you want to
No, you're good.
do you want to take a shot at what your definition of zero trust is? And for the audience today, you can see that the definition of zero trust is a little bit different between everybody. So yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, for me, zero trust really takes it, or I like to take the approach of, trust nothing, verify everything. That's what we should be doing on a day-to-day basis anyway. But extending that to individual processes even is really where you're going to start to see a lot of security come into play. I mean, it's one thing to be able to apply zero trust networking, ensure that things are properly segmented, ensure that users and devices can't access things that they normally shouldn't. But a lot of attacks happen directly on the devices themselves, either through an end user exploit or even a software level exploit for some sort of public web server. Being able to apply those zero trust being able to apply that zero trust framework directly to the endpoint itself ensures that your software can't do things that it shouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, ZTNA network segmentation, what absolutely critical. But
Sure.
if the bad guys get through that, I kind of use an egg philosophy. If they kind of get through the hard shell of the egg, sometimes it's really liquidy in the middle, and then the bad guys kind of have free reign to it. So okay, we're talking about endpoint zero trust. Uh, Caleb, this is a question that always comes up, so I thought I would just start with it because then I think I'll set kind of the framework for the rest of this discussion today. So when we think about endpoint controls, forever we thought about, EDR, which we previously, for us old guys, thought of antivirus and things like that. So now we're talking about zero trust and maybe a different kind of philosophy there. What are your thoughts about comparison and contrast, at 100,000 foot level of what the difference is between, EDR antivirus and now endpoint zero trust?
Well, I think they're both extremely relevant. They're just two approaches to
And I'm going
achieve
to
a
show,
sim.
Caleb,
Go
I
ahead.
didn't mean to interrupt. I'm going to show
No,
you
you're good.
a different slide here, which might help the audience. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. That's kind of what I was thinking of. The there are two methods to accomplish something similar. I don't think that one or the other is necessarily better or worse, but I do think that they complement each other. From a controls and detection perspective, if you look at this triangle or pyramid, I guess this technically is, there are a number of ways that we can look at this. On one side, you have detection. That would be your traditional EDR, your MDR, et cetera. And that's looking for specific criteria or indications or activities that it can then detect on or alert on. On the control side, we've defined what can and can't happen. And really where they complement each other is where, I mean, at the end of the day, configuring controls can have, human lapse or judgment,
Yes.
misses in judgment or misses in configuration. And where I believe they both complement each other is if you can detect specific actions that might have been missed by your controls, you've created a more holistic picture, or maybe not picture, but you've created a more holistic defense. You've defined what can happen, and if something happens inadvertently or accidentally, you've still got another line of defense with your detection. That means controlling your storage. That means controlling your applications, what applications can interact with, whether they can move laterally, escalate themselves, use privileged credentials, or even live off the land.
Yep, and live off the land. I think everybody knows this in the audience is leveraging those built-in things. Let's just say with Windows, for example, because it's so prolific. And let me add in that the Endpoint Zero Trust product we're talking about runs on Mac, runs on Linux too. We love all of them. We don't, have any bias towards any of them. But you said one thing, Caleb, that I think is so important in that, let's call it the EDR again. And we'll steal some of Josh's verbiage as well, is that we used to trust but verify with traditional, and there's a judgment component in that. And sometimes the judgment can be off. And as a result of that, the default of the EDR has been, okay, now allow it to run.
Or it's fine until it's not.
Okay. Yep, that's fair.
Potentially.
That's fair.
I mean, I think we see that quite frequently. We've participated in multiple incident responses. We've coordinated cleanups, et cetera. And one of the things that we often see is threat actors are getting smarter, not dumber. They are actually using things that go unnoticed on purpose. Is that connection during the day, is that expected? Well, probably. It's not abnormal. Is doing this abnormal? I think an illustration, it might be 18 months old now, is a specific service dumping, or not say dumping, that's not the right word, but querying Active Directory to get a list of users. That's not necessarily a malicious action. It's questionable, but in that trust but verify model, we're saying, well, that's okay until it's not. Well, what the threat actor in that situation did was actually collect information about what users might be elevated or privileged users so that they know where to attack. So we'd say that's bad. Yeah, it is bad. But the EDR looked at that and was like, it's not really bad. It's not necessarily anything, that can be convicted. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that where the Endpoint Zero Trust comes into play here is we're looking at those actions, or we're not actually looking at those actions, we're preventing those actions. We're saying who can and what can make those queries. So in the event that a maybe less privileged account is compromised, that account has no rights, no ability to make those queries or collect that telemetry that can be used to move laterally or attack elsewhere.
Yeah, well said.
Did I answer your question?
It's difficult, man. This is where everybody gets stuck. So I've been thinking about this. So again, the traditional EDR, this is being like on the left side of your screen here. There's a judgment that needs to be made. And typically if the judgment can't be figured out, it just assumes that it's fine and it lets it run and execute. Okay, so the zero trust philosophy is like deny everything, point blank, unless it is specifically predefined as allowed. So it's very black and white, very binary. There's no judgment call there. It's kind of do a predefined thing. Well, first you have to do an inventory, and by default, everything is like denied. And then there's kind of a learning phase, Josh, that I'd like you to go through here in a second. But through each of those things, when an inventory is done, and we'll get into this here again, Josh, with the learning mode, but there needs to be a specific allow, so that if something is seen that is kind of wonky or doesn't quite line up with, flat out denied. Okay. Now, this is why Endpoint Zero Trust ZTNA and Endpoint Zero Trust and, the government and everybody else, mandating zero trust, why it's so important with 0 days, specifically. We just went through some statistics with this a month ago in the Verizon report. Um, when a 0 day comes out for a vulnerability, something network facing, you like literally have like 24 hours to patch that thing before the bad actors are scanning your network, recognizing it, and oftentimes have an exploit written for it. For things inside your network, I don't care if it's on-prem or in the cloud or whatever, we'll just call it inside your environment. You have about 4 days to patch it until it reaches a very high probability of being exploited. So especially that 0 day for external facing things, if you have a product in place that just flat out denies things that it hasn't seen before, you can kind of see how powerful that is. Okay. So Josh, oh, did you have something to say, Caleb? I didn't mean to
Nope, I think
interrupt.
you're getting to it. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I never want to say anything that's inaccurate or not true.
No, you're good.
So Josh, how can you explain like almost the installation process in like kind of how this learning mode takes place and kind of like really, what's happening there? And then we'll get into built-in stuff and then custom stuff and things like that. But again, if you'd
Yeah.
start at like 100,000 feet, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good. Before I delve into that, I did just want to go back to a point that Caleb was making with detection versus control. In normal circumstances, detection would be monitoring what's going on your endpoints. Say someone does abuse or install a common tool. One of the ones that I had dealt with fairly recently was a reverse proxy called ngrok. That was not blocked. It is a legitimate tool, especially used by devs. But having a control application, a zero trust application, wouldn't have allowed that to be installed and could have prevented that reverse proxy access. So you kind of need both to be able to evaluate what has been installed and then those controls to make sure that things either can't be installed or can't be used. But yeah, to go over the install process, essentially, and this goes for a lot of zero trust applications, but you'll deploy that software. It goes into a learning mode to try and identify all of the applications that exist on the endpoints currently. Talking about ThreatLocker specifically, there's about a 21-day period where it's going to go into alerting mode, try and identify the existing applications that you have in your environment. After that period and during that period, you're going to be reviewing those identified applications, trying to determine if they are applications that should be running in your environment, and then working to ensure you have the proper policies around those apps.
Absolutely. And in kind of a neat way, or maybe a strategy to do that over this 20-day learning mode is to perhaps group them by department or software need. For example, you might have a marketing department that uses the whole Adobe suite, right? But obviously, accounting is not going to use those. So accounting might have QuickBooks and whatever else. Then you have an engineering department that isn't going to need QuickBooks, but they're going to need Visual Studio and Visio. And, if you're an architecture firm, you're going to need all of the Autodesk stuff and whatnot. And, you can control applications to the nth degree, if you will. So at the end of the day, this is ultimately application whitelisting. And Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong, but during this 21-day period, it literally inventories everything on your machine, especially applications, DLLs, scripts, COM
Correct.
objects, and yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to back up just a hair because I think
Yeah.
that we, some of us that have been in the industry a long time know application control. Application control isn't new. Application control and application whitelisting is not new. This has been around for a long time. The complexity and cost to implement has been a bit of a barrier to entry for most people, and I think that's where we find this solution to be very, very different. I wanted to touch. I'll get back to your question, Dean. So I apologize.
Sure. No. That's great.
The very valuable thing here is the fact that we are not having to manually whitelist or allow like Windows updates. I know historically I've talked to some of you may be in the audience that have the concern that, well, what happens when Windows or Microsoft releases a patch and I haven't whitelisted that and approved it? It doesn't get applied, or I get all sorts of noise because it's being denied from applying. Yeah, that's correct. Well, the approach here that is different is that those applications are already, from a global perspective, monitored and controlled from the actual platform service. So that means that as updates come out for most of your applications, there's 6,000 some applications that are already known, identified, and are kept up to date based on when the manufacturer releases, or the vendor, whatever you want, whatever word you want to use there, releases updates, so that those are automatically allowed. The other beautiful thing with those being allowed as part of this service is that we are sandboxing them and only allowing exactly that. In some scenarios where you might be creating a whitelist for a new piece of software in a legacy application control service, won't mention any names, you might inadvertently allow something you didn't mean to. This maybe not related to what you're intending to whitelist, and it may have just slipped in as being, something that was running at the same time. What's beautiful about this is these are all sandboxed, they're isolated, so only that application, that executable, that binary that we're adding is being added to that allow list. So I guess, backing up just a hair to where I started, the difference here is that the ability to build policy and control applications and control interactions between different software is a lot more granular, and it's a lot more intuitive, and much of it is already done for you. That 21-day learning period that Josh referenced is where we're looking for how you use your applications. At the end of that onboarding experience, that learning mode, you really shouldn't be bouncing off of your endpoint zero trust. You shouldn't be bouncing off of ThreatLocker. You should be able to do anything that you were doing previously, because we've already defined what you can do. So I guess that's kind of where this differentiates itself from just application control, because I know, having been in the industry a long period of time, application control has been something we've talked about for years. It's just very, very costly and very, very time intensive to implement.
Yeah, as we started to evaluate this, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, and I've been in the game for 25, 30 years, and 90% of that I was a sysadmin. And I really pride myself, especially in Microsoft platforms, to know Windows like inside and out. I mean, I can drive and make the thing dance without a GUI, you know what I mean? I've been using the PowerShell since 2006 when it was, named Monad after some Greek, mythology thing. And you know, when we saw this product and evaluated it, I really came at it from the perspective of, this has got to be too good to be true. And I really kind of tried to shoot holes through the thing, and I couldn't. But like Caleb said, just repeating him, there's been some vendors that have tried this in the past, and the complexity and the management of it, and after it goes through a learning mode and you actually put it in enforcement mode, it just breaks things. And that is so frustrating. And then an update comes out and it just flat out breaks things. In the past, with our ZTA here, our endpoint zero trust, that might happen a little bit after the learning mode, but then it literally like kind of goes away, like seriously. The other thing that impressed the heck out of me is that these older products, if I elevated up to domain admin, local admin, or something even worse like system there's a system account that you don't see too often, that sometimes that could circumvent the policy. And that was one of the first things I tried to do. And it just, this is not hyperbolic, but no matter what account you're using on that machine, even if you elevate, you still can't get around it. The policy stays in place. So why is that important? Because, when a bad actor gets in, the first thing they want to do is they want to steal a highly privileged account, so they can move laterally and so forth. With endpoint zero trust, that ain't happening. Or if it does, it becomes incredibly difficult to do. So let's jump to kind of so we have the allow listing as a primary pillar of one of the big features of this thing. So like Caleb said, and Josh, Caleb, I don't care who takes this, but not only do you have the block listing, okay, but now something can be allowed to run. But even around the stuff that's allowed to run, you can control how those applications interact with each other. And that's called ring fencing. And that absolutely blows my mind. And I'll just give you like one silly example of that. Let's just say, well, this was a real story. About 3 years ago, the Windows print service, spooler.exe, had a vulnerability in it. It runs underneath system as an identity, so it has access to everything. But should the print spooler ever be speaking to PowerShell? No, right? So let's put a little ring fence or put a little barrier in between the print spooler and PowerShell and ensure that those two applications never interact with each other. Josh, do you maybe want to make sure that I didn't
Yeah,
overstate
no,
anything
you're
there?
you're exactly correct. And the other thing to even add on to that is it doesn't just extend to local processes. You would be able to use like network control to be able to put in ring fencing policies to access specific devices, or even storage policies to prevent a piece of software from accessing maybe a specific network drive or network path. So if you had like some sort of ERP software, CRM software, you could allow that software to hit the specific share that maybe holds the database that it references, and then not allow every single other application on every single computer from touching that. So yeah, you can get incredibly granular with what you even want the applications to be able to do.
Right. So Josh or Caleb was talking about the living off the land perspective earlier. So that's leveraging PowerShell, Command exe, whatever. I can't remember what the com C script or whatever that is.
Mm.
But anyway, um, those should hardly ever be called, well, I shouldn't say that, by everyday applications. Okay, so the bad actor, they want to get into your network, they want to steal a highly privileged account, they want to move laterally, okay, which again can be controlled through endpoint zero trust. They want to find leech on to an application like the print spooler. They want to download interpreter or whatever that may be into the print spooler. And then from there, they want to be able to look at Active Directory like the ntds.dit database where all the passwords are stored. They want to be able to call PowerShell. They want to be able to call a DLL. They want to be called, this and that. And again, the ring fencing can be, that policy can be, let's say, defined to kind of the nth degree so that living off the land capability isn't there, which kind of makes the lateral movement, in my opinion. I don't want to ever use the word impossible when it comes to cybersecurity, but let's just say it kind of gets near to that point. So did I exaggerate there, guys? Or Caleb, do you want to
Uh,
build on that, or do we kind of hit it?
no, I think one of the things that you hit on, and Josh, you can feel free to elaborate on this, but I think that after you've defined what applications are allowed to do, I'm not going to say that vulnerabilities in 0 days don't exist anymore. That would be foolish. You still want to patching. I think Dean, in your DBIR spilling the beans, you did go over how patching is critical and is often the ingress point, or missed patching
Yes.
or whatever. The 0 days significantly are reduced in severity. You would still want to patch for them, but I think in your print spooler illustration, we've already defined what the print spooler can talk to from both a network perspective as well as an application perspective. So the fact that a threat actor was able to own that service and attempt to make those calls to query things or execute or move laterally, etc., those aren't even allowed. Those can't even happen because we've already defined what is normal activity, normal process for that service. So the I mean, you've got a threat actor in the environment. It's not a good thing, but what we've done is we've severely narrowed what they can do. Obviously, we still need to get them out, but we've severely narrowed what they can do in the event that something is breached.
And just to take a side note, this is the organic part of the discussion, and then I promise you guys that I'll reel this back in. But Caleb, in a incident response scenario, can you talk about how you saw, bad actors in the environment? Let's just say knocking on the doors of these endpoints, and
Yeah.
there was no judgment call. Yeah, go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, we actually have seen an environment that did have a malicious actor gain access to it. We did get to watch them try to execute different payloads. They tried to circumvent Threat Locker. They tried to brute force things. But at the end of the day, it was all denied because we'd already defined what is normal process and what's allowed to occur. The malicious actor pounded on endpoints for nearly 8 hours before they gave up. And they never once gained access to an endpoint. They never once were able to execute a payload. They never once were able to circumvent the protections. And they were, I think we sanitized a PDF that we could potentially share, but you can actually see them trying to circumvent the protections by renaming and trying to change hash or rewrite scripts or try to circumvent all the protections that were in place, and they were unable to do so because it isn't based off of blocking specific hash. It's based on blocking specific applications. It's based on allowing only the things that you want to occur. So anything else is it's completely blocked. So
Yeah,
full
and
stop.
no judgment call in that scenario.
No.
It's like if it's not what's the word I'm looking, it's like mandatory access control. If it's like flat out not given the ability to, we approve that you can authenticate, there's no judgment call in that. It's just like we've either approved it to run or not. There's no judgment call. And of the file, there's a bunch of different aspects of it, like Caleb mentioned, the MD5 hash or the, SHA, whatever, 256 hash or what. So if there's any like little, as much as a comma changed in that application, or the publisher gets changed or whatnot, it becomes foreign. And by default, right? Deny by default, that thing isn't going to run. Okay. So I think everybody kind of gets the idea there. Okay, so let's reel it back in. Let's take like our marketing example or something like that, where during that 21 period learning mode, okay, they got all the applications and DLLs and whatnot inventoried and policies created and okay, so let's say that they bring in a new application that's never been seen before, but now needs to be learned about and allowed and so forth. So Josh or Caleb, could you kind of walk us through that process?
Yeah, I can take that one. So that's another thing that's pretty great in Threat Locker. I'm sure other Zero Trust solutions do it in a similar way. But ThreatLocker will actually tie installation commands to that activity. So you can actually filter for and see all of the installing applications and not just generic activity on the endpoint. So we can actually see the initial execution, all of the attempted installed DLLs and what have you. The other nice thing is when the user tries to execute that software, they can send a submission to the console. You can go in there, grab that submission, and then even actually upload it to their like
Yeah,
cloud
like a
sandbox.
VDI sandbox. Yep, exactly. Yep.
That gives you the ability to run the software, collect every single thing that software is installing, all the dependencies that are needed, and create an application package directly from that. And then you can push it out to whatever workstation groups or workstations that need that software. So it makes it incredibly easy to be able to just baseline that software, push it out, and have them off and rolling in a matter of minutes.
And I really liked that you mentioned the workflow. There is a built-in workflow into this solution. It doesn't take, any extra configuration like a SQL database or, some ServiceNow, kind of help desky workflow mechanism. This solution has a mechanism built into it where you can, assign approvers and whatnot. They can approve and deny and whatever they need to do, and it happens quickly. And I'll give you an example of that. I had to like update a driver for a camera, I don't know, about a month ago, and I needed to get to the device manager. And it denied me, and there's a little pop-up, hey Dean, it's denied, you don't have permissions, it's blacklisted and whatnot. So I put in a little request, and Andy, our internal IT manager, I think he gave me permission to install that driver and configure everything. And I think he maybe gave me like 2 hours to do that. So not only is there, hey, can I do this, but there's this philosophy of just enough access, just in time, only for a specific period of time.
And specific
So
application to add to that.
yeah,
So
thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
spawned from what you requested.
Yes, yeah. Do you guys want to expand on that, or did we pretty much cover that?
I think that's pretty good. I think I would expand a little bit. I think Dean mentioned it. We are using this internally. We have this deployed everywhere. We have for quite some time. And one of the things that's very challenging for us being an IT organization is we do have, I think, what do we have, 80 some engineers, 90 engineers, and all those engineers. Well, I am I an engineer? I don't know.
Absolutely, Engineer,
we have
architect,
we have all
guitar
of these.
player.
Yeah, that's true. We have all of these engineers that are using their specific applications, their specific workflows, etc. And through our deployment, we did find, which I shouldn't say we found, we were able to eliminate any shadow IT by being able to define what is acceptable applications for our organization. We created a library. We created a if you're trying to do an IP scan, you're not using one of the 50 IP scanners out there. You're going to use the one that HighPoint has designated, just as a simple illustration. But the reality is, and I think building on your illustration, Dean, we do have a lot of engineers, and they do run into things that they need to execute from time to time that aren't necessarily in our approved list because they aren't, software that we deployed from our internal IT organization. And in those situations, we still can allow those engineers to work with you and support you as the customer because as they run into those, they're able to request access to those. And we can either, if it's something that we're dealing with frequently, we can actually even run it through our change control board and determine whether we want to allow that permanently, or if we need to just provide, as Dean said, just in time, just enough access for that moment in time to provide the support needed for an application that we have either not used before or haven't haven't necessarily approved as a
before.
yeah,
Mhm.
perfect. But because of the mechanisms available to us, we have the ability to to approve those and allow those for a specific period of time, or like I said, if they run through our change advisory board, then we'll maybe add them permanently. The other piece that goes into this that's really important that we really haven't touched on is the automatic elevation control.
Yes.
So as part of this platform, you may have a number of users that need local admin rights. Well, the scariest thing about local admin rights is they're pretty much unregulated. If I make Dean a local admin, he can do whatever he wants on his computer because he's a local admin. I mean, you can add secondary accounts and all of those things, but if those account credentials are ever compromised, that local admin on that machine has carte blanche to do whatever they want. I think I'll use our engineers as an example again. There are some random things within Windows that technically require elevation. If you remove local admin rights, you kind of hamstring a lot of people, especially in our situation with the number of engineers we have. Like, for example, changing an IP address in the control panel is considered an elevated task. Well, is it really a security risk to change your IP address? We can argue we can argue that at another time, but the reality is our network engineers, as a primary illustration, do change their NIC address to support our customers frequently. One of the things that we were able to do is write a policy that elevates just that DLL that controls I'm just totally blanked on what they call that.
You're kind of elevating almost the DLL and not the user, right?
Correct. Yeah, the user gets no elevation, so just that specific DLL that's being used to modify the NIC is elevated. The user has no additional privileges. So in the event that, let's just say, that's a tough illustration.
Let's take an example I heard, Caleb, from ThreatLocker is that for whatever reason, when you need to update QuickBooks, you have to be an administrator to do that.
That is correct, which doesn't quite make sense, but okay, I didn't write software.
So instead of elevating, Josh, do you want to take that, maybe the QuickBooks example?
So instead of having to elevate the whole individual user, you can allow just those, even just the QuickBooks update process, to have that administrative privileges to be able to adjust any of the DLLs, rewrite DLLs, update local database files, any of the reference or any of the registry key references.
Yeah, awesome. And hey, kind of to go sideways, it's live television, right? In the chat in the chat area that I've been ignoring. Sorry about that, guys. Our CTO, who is just a fantastic person, as much as he is brilliant, gave a definition of zero trust as well. So please check that out. Okay, or we'll reel it back in. I quickly, because I want to leave time for Q&A. One of the most impressive things that I saw, ironically, as we were demoing this solution, how many ever years ago, was just the reporting capability. Let's call it the telemetry querying.
Audit log.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. And can I give a specific example? So we used the technology. What the heck was it called? Was it Manage Engine? The Orion solution that used the Log4j. The log
for Log4j. Yeah, that would be Manage Engine.
Manage Engine. Thank you, Josh. And we were obviously knew where the Log4j was in that solution, and we went out there and followed the advice and updated it, patched it, and so forth. But just out of curiosity, right? Because we had this solution deployed everywhere in our environment, and again, it takes like an inventory of darn near every file, maybe literally
actually everything.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to be hyperbolic there.
Nope.
But we went to the audit log, and we're just, just for giggles, because we're still just trying this thing out. We're like, hey, have you ever seen elsewhere where Log4j is? And sure enough, it maybe just found one or two locations. It wasn't, too dangerous or anything. But the point is just the power to have that inventory there was just really impressive to me.
I'd go a step further. That was very nice because not every vendor was necessarily forthcoming with where Log4j, Log4Shell was actually existed. I mean, for illustration, Dean, your illustration that you're using, we actually saw it in some older versions of Acrobat Reader,
Oh,
which kind of surprised me, but it was there. But I think the other thing that was really interesting as we were going through this, and that we've used and leveraged quite a bit for both ourselves and for many of our customers that use this solution, is the ability to watch what what executables try to query and interact with things. And what was
oh,
really, really interesting was to watch how much Chrome,
Yeah.
Google's browser, likes to index and query specific user directories. It was very, very odd. Chrome likes to index all of your users' files. Did you give it permission to do that? Did you know it did that? Because
no.
it was a bit of a shock to us, and we're like, why? So immediately, we actually applied a ring fence policy to that, so that Chrome can only query the things that it needs access to, and the only things that it truly needs access to function are, a couple of folders in program files and program data, maybe some temp files. There's no reason that it would be querying shared drives, shared folders, user directories, etc. And what is Google doing with that data? Well, I think we all know what Google's doing with that data. That's a dumb question, but it was very, very interesting to see, what kind of data is being queried. They're probably, well, I don't believe they were necessarily stealing the contents. That would be a whole different problem. But, the fact that they're able to query that and use that telemetry and that data for, some sort of money-making purpose, is rather, I don't know, disconcerting. I don't know that I like that Google's querying all of
Yeah,
my directories and files
it's
and
just in
knows
bad taste, right?
it is.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it really helps to highlight potential application misuse, even.
That's true.
Some of the things that we've seen from Chrome, again, as an example, is extensions that are directly calling command prompt.
Oh,
We saw that with Password Manager reaching to command prompt to be able to update itself locally, or update the locally installed agent. Directly from that plugin. So there's things like that you wouldn't necessarily want to continue, or could be abused by a malicious extension.
And we have seen
absolutely.
malicious extensions through our tenure using this and pouring through our audit logs for our customers and dealing with that. We have definitely found malicious extensions where we've kind of been like, why would they need to execute this? And I won't say any extensions in particular, but many shopping extensions
Oh,
have nefarious or at least questionable ties to different nation states, and do try to do different things that are maybe less than desirable.
Yeah, clipboard monitoring, one of
Yeah,
them.
that one was a shock. That one was a surprise.
that must have been me, Caleb, because I love the coupon things and stuff. Maybe I can request that, but Andy might deny it. I don't know, but
Well, if he
uh,
asks me, my recommendation is to deny it.
yeah, yeah, I know. Okay, so I want to mention one thing without a Q&A here, but you guys mentioned being able to recognize and find shadow IT,
Yeah.
and being an administrator one time in my life. I think the whole audience here can recognize and appreciate how dangerous shadow IT can be for a number of reasons. Um, okay, it's 11 like 55. Okay, so this might go to 12:55 Central. So please stick around, but I promise you we'll end it 5 minutes after. I want to leave a good 5 minutes for Q&A. Um, Caleb, can you talk
Yeah.
about, because this, listening to this, it sounds really complex. It sounds cumbersome to set
Mm-hmm.
up and, whatnot. So now can we go, okay, we call this a uh, a smart
Smart
service.
service.
What
Mm-hmm.
does smart mean, and how does Highpoint ease the ability to get into this tool?
Well, We have a number of experts in this that are both certified and cybersecurity experts that have been implementing this and have seen a lot of things. We have some basic policies, some basic recommendations, some basic deployment logic that we use to help ease that onboarding process. Additionally, we are always keeping our ear to the ground for what might be out there. I think, I don't know how many of you guys are using Screen Connect. That's more of a managed service tool, but I believe a lot of Screen Connect, or a lot of there are a lot of different enterprises out there that use Screen Connect. Screen Connect had a fairly major vulnerability and to some degree breach just a few weeks ago. And one of the things that we did proactively is for our customers that also have Threat Locker and this service, we actually did reach out and create and apply a policy to both defend and block that nefarious or questionable behavior in the event that their organization was targeted. And there were a number of organizations that were targeted. We work with our customers to make sure that we're not, doing things without your knowledge, because this is a co-managed service. I mean, all of our services are co-managed. We're looking to work with you, not against you. So we're going to work with you to make sure that we're not inadvertently hampering something that you guys were expecting, or us determining what your appetite for risk might be. So as far as to answer your question, the deployment process is very, very, very critical to get right. Making sure that you've identified all of the services, applications, user processes, etc., to make sure that you're not inadvertently going to hamper your end users and their experience after the product is locked down. I think, Josh, you mentioned 21 days. Depending on the complexity of the organization, that can take more or it can take less time. But that is, a generalization for the process for us to learn all of that, and then make sure that we've coordinated and collaborated with you as the end customer to make sure that those policies are in place, the elevation is in place, the application control, the application definitions are all built, and your users, if we've done it right, and we've had a significant amount of success with this, if we've done it right, your users shouldn't even know that this has been deployed. They might bounce off it. Dean, you had a really great illustration. You're updating drivers for a camera that that you maybe isn't necessarily standard issue for High Point. Well, yep, you will probably run into it. I think some of our sales team have run into this, where we had actually very early on, we had one of our account managers that was trying to use, I can't remember what HPE's storage estimator tool is, but it's not an installed application. It runs as a standalone. Why am I totally blanking? It's you don't install it. It's just a single executable that you run. That was not cataloged because during the learning mode, during the learning period, it wasn't actually collected, or it wasn't used because it's not used all that often. So in that illustration, that account manager, our sales team, ran into Threat Locker, and we were able to allow them access to do what they needed to do. And then because it is an estimating tool, we ran it through CAB, and I believe ultimately it was added to our allow list, and any permissions, elevation, etc., that might be required for that tool were cataloged and created, and that policy was created as well.
Cool, so very cool.
The magic is in the deployment, and there is quite a bit of stuff that we do assist with after the fact, but a huge amount of the magic is building all those policies and making sure that we've accounted for everything that might need to be accounted for.
Fantastic.
The other thing I'll add to that, sorry, Dean, I know you're
no.
We're chewing up your time here, but
no, we're good.
We do actually have a proof of value, or a trial that is available if that's something that you want to see it. We allow you to install it on a few endpoints and kind of get a feel for what that looks like. That is a guided tour, if you will, so that we do stick with you through every step of that process and answer any questions that you have. So if that's something you're interested in, you can feel free to reach out to marketing, or you can reach out to your account manager, or you can reach out to Dean, Josh, or myself. Any one of us would be happy to help out with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, we're going to hit on 3 other things here. really quick, and then in parallel, we're going to do the Q&A. If you can put your questions in the chat on the side as we're making these 3 comments at the same time, we will then also address those questions. Okay. Number 1, and this is a flex. I'm sorry, I'm just being forthcoming with you, but we have unusual partnerships with a handful of our vendors, and I would literally almost call them friendships. And this isn't like middle management. We're talking like C-level people. Like Josh is on an advisory committee for one of those. Dwayne, our CTO, has like a personal relationship with a vendor who's, I don't want to mention their name, but they're an 800-pound gorilla, in their space. That's just another example. And then Caleb, probably don't mention names, but I know you have a personal relationship with the CEO of this
Yep.
solution and are also on the advisory committee.
Yep. So yeah, we have direct access to those people. I'm working on, Josh and I are working on bringing a recommendation to ThreatLocker for a couple of ideas. I won't say anything more than that right now because there's no guarantees on it. But we do have those relationships, and it's been very, very rewarding to be able to be that close with these higher level product officers, CEO, all of these people. So we do have a fairly large influence. A lot of the products that or I should say the add-ins that have come out, we've been able to test before they're released and provide feedback and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right, Dean.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, 2 things, and then we're going to wrap it up. Again, we'll try to do it by 12:05 here, maybe a couple of minutes, maybe 12:07. But Caleb, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to, is there something that I forgot today that you would like to mention? Is there anything that we missed?
I think there is. I don't know that I'd say missed. I want to go back to just briefly. I want to go back to our detection versus controls conversation. There's a bit of a appetite for risk that's involved in determining which side of the pyramid you're on, or if you're on both sides of the pyramid, or if you're trying to collect both sides of that pyramid. The detection is I think I alluded to it. Detection is the behavior monitoring. It's looking for anything that might be nefarious, whereas on the control side, we've defined what can and can't happen. There is a very, very good story for both of them. It isn't one or the other necessarily, but we've talked through it. We've also noted that it is easier, or the implementation has been made easier on the control side. However, there is more effort that goes into controls over detection. So we're trying to be as honest as possible here. The point of spilling the beans, I believe, is to inform and be transparent. There is a significant amount of value that comes from adding those controls in conjunction with detection, but we'd be happy to have a conversation with you about your organization's risk appetite if that's something you need. And we're also, that's the long and short of it. Is we would love to have a conversation with you around what your risk appetite might be and whether or not you need both, or could get away with one or the other.
Well said. There's in risk and regulatory compliance and
Yep.
Insurance. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Josh. Same question for you. Anything we missed? Anything you'd like to bring up before we close the talk for today?
No, I think Caleb kind of hit on it pretty good. The only other thing I really add to that is just ensuring that if you are going down this route, you maybe have a little bit of information like a business impact analysis to try and determine like what you are trying to control within your environment, what types of risks that you have, maybe a little bit of a risk assessment so that you can make sure that we're implementing the proper controls first and then going through and locking everything else down.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, everybody, please contact us through marketing@highpointnetworks.com. You have the no spam guarantee. And I guess we just appreciate everybody joining today. This is the beginning of a conversation that we would love to have with you, to listen to you, to sympathize, to empathize, to have no judgment at all, but to see how we can align with your business initiatives to help control risk and also optimize your business. So again, thank you very much for joining. And in about another month, we will have another Spilling the Beans. If you have any suggestions on topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know through marketing as well. All right, fantastic. Have a great day, everybody. Catch you later. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, Caleb. Thanks, Josh.